Hello, and welcome to an online JordanCon event, Writer's Track Never Have I Ever. I am Richard Fife, director of the Writer's Track, and I'll be moderating this panel. And although I don't really have as many stories, I will be imbibing some Glenmorangie 18 throughout the panel. And if I happen to have done any things. Let's meet our panelists. Faith.
I'm Faith Hunter. I've been traditionally published since 1990, and I almost said 1890 because after the last year, it feels like it's been that long. But since 1990, and have now branched out into smaller press and am doing a lot of different things. I am currently published by Penguin Random House and Audible and Lore Seekers Press, and I am the author of the Jane Yellow Rock series and the Soulwood series and the brand new sci-fi series, Junkyard Cats.
I believe you said you'll be drinking green tea.
I'm drinking tea.
Gerald.
I'm Gerald L. Coleman. I don't say L to be pretentious. I say L because I want you to know that when you go online and look up Gerald Coleman, I am not the professional hockey player or the Catholic priest who you will find. Drop the initial in there. You can actually find me. I'm coming to you from an undisclosed location in one of the national forests in the country. No, I'm in my backyard. I'm a science fiction and fantasy author, and I'm glad to be here. Oh, I am drinking a Manhattan made with Old Forester.
And are you doing the orange? You doing the orange Manhattan? Yeah.
AJ.
Hey, I'm AJ Hartley. I write lots of things, and that's all.
And he doesn't want us to buy any of it.
Apparently not.
Very good. I write mystery, thriller, fantasy, science fiction. I've been publishing for nearly 20 years, and stuff. You'll find it.
To the constant consternation of his agent.
That's right. To the consternation of my agent, yes. And the consternation of my agent about the multiple genres that I work in is rivaled only by her consternation when she sees me do marketing.
I get that one.
Yeah. And what is your drink of choice tonight, AJ?
Tonight, I am drinking a local Voodoo Ranger IPA.
Okay. So for those who aren't aware, Never Have I Ever, an American drinking game. So first time for AJ here.
First time for me.
And for Faith as well.
We don't need a reason to drink.
But so all the panelists have submitted to me anonymously some questions to which I will read. They all start with Never Have I Ever. If any of the panelists have done that, they need to take a drink, and then we get to hear the stories.
Or haven't done that, or just feel like drinking.
You just feel like drinking.
This is just an excuse for us to get together and drink. Enjoy.
Quality entertainment.
Okay, so let's start off. Never have I ever written in someone I know as an antagonist and killed them off.
Okay, so wait a minute. Now on the serious note, are we drinking if we did it? Or
if you did it. If you've done this, you take a drink.
How many times do I have to drink for that?
Just the one.
Okay.
If you have done it.
What if you didn't kill them? What if you just kind of keep the character around and abuse them?
Well, take a drink and we'll hear the story. Okay.
I think we're all drinking.
Apparently. So Faith, you listed first. What's your story?
I worked at a small hospital, and I wrote my boss in as a cat torturing pedophile.
Wow.
And at the end of the book, I shot him with a shotgun, put him on a prop boat, clotheslined him while he was going through the swamp in a prop boat, which flipped him off into the swamp full of mating alligators, dumped gasoline on top of the swamp and set it on fire.
So it sounds like this was a person you got along with really well.
So I missed that. Say what, AJ?
So it sounds like this was a person you really got along with. And
I adored him.
yeah. Did he know?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
How much
And he-
was the
and he-
legal fees?
He didn't fire me. Well,
Did he sue your ass?
no.
Did you have permission, or was this a surprise?
He thought it was funny.
Did he know ahead of time, or was this a surprise after it was written?
I told him I was writing him in as the bad guy and he was going to be really disgusting and evil. And he said, okay, but I don't think he knew what I had.
What that entailed.
Don't attempt this at home. For you new writers, do not do this.
This was back in the 90s. And I admit, if I were doing it today, I would not have used his name. I would have done the same thing, but I wouldn't have used his name. I would have just.
You used his
Oh, you
name?
used his actual name? Wow, baby. That's gangster.
You need to get on something more than green tea. Because that's like a bottle of cognac or something right there.
That's straight gangster right there.
Yeah.
It's my favorite story of all time.
I'm surprised you're still alive to tell it.
He thought it was funny. Changed the name by one consonant toward the end. So, and no, I'm not going to tell you what book or what the name was.
Oh, yeah. You want to keep that nice and secret.
Now everyone can just wonder. They know it's back in the 90s, so they can go look back at the pub dates and figure it out,
Yeah.
maybe.
I didn't tell anyone under what name I was publishing in the 90s. Good luck.
Oh.
See, if Gerald's
Scavenger hunt.
background was Faith's background, I would just assume she was in witness protection at this.
Yep, in
Okay.
a cabin in Oklahoma or something.
Yeah.
Too many trees for Oklahoma. So, Gerald, what's your story?
Okay, so in college, I had a roommate for a brief time. It was a dude that I befriended. I had this thing where, and I guess it's part of the way I was raised, that if I was around, I did this even in elementary school on the bus and all that kind of thing. If there was someone who was isolated, who didn't have a friend or whatever, I would kind of befriend them. If we were on the bus and people were playing dozens and picking on someone, I would start picking on the person who was doing the bullying. So that's how I met this dude. And he turned out to be the kind of person that if you're sitting there having dinner and you say, "Oh wow, my mom just bought a new Mercedes. It's really nice." He would say, "Oh well, my dad, he bought a Bentley." Like there was nothing that could be mentioned by anyone in any setting that he did not feel an overwhelming desire to immediately one-up them, to the point everyone else knows, come on, bruh, we know you're lying. We're looking you in the face. But he would die with a lie. I mean, it didn't matter what was going. If you just got $100, he just got 500. He was that person. He also, the other thing that infuriated me about him was the fact that he had absolutely no sense of direction. I mean, like none. I mean, you sitting in the passenger seat, you're 20 yards from the stop sign and you say, make a left here. And he would turn right. I mean, it just, I mean, infuriating. And there was a bunch of other stuff that he did that just, you know, he was basically the cat who got on everybody's last nerve. That's
Did you
who
kill
he
him?
was.
Did
Yeah.
you kill him?
Does it involve alligators?
No. What I do is anytime I need a fool in one of my stories, I pattern that character off of him.
So he's shown up in many iterations.
Yes. Yes, he's an archetype. He's an archetype in my in my canon. So anytime there's a fool,
mentor, threshold guardian, jackass.
Yes. That's him.
So AJ, did you have a story?
I don't have a good one compared to those two. There have been times when I have written a bad guy and modeled it on somebody I knew, and then I will, unlike Faith, I'll change the age or the gender or something like that, so that as a way. Well, I mean, you changed yours out like in removing some of his limbs, for instance, via the alligator, setting him on fire. I'm sure that changed him quite radically.
Yeah, I never use his name. My guy, I never use his exact name. Yeah. Faith is a gangster. That's all I can say.
Yeah. Faith should not be allowed to answer first in these.
Okay.
Because it's going to make the rest of us look lame.
Have not done everything.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Faith, she won that round, hands down.
Hey. Okay. Never have I ever written a brilliant section of a story late at night, only to wake up the next day, read it, and realize it's garbage.
Yeah. Faith is not.
I'm thinking.
She's written a lot.
Faith is too good a writer for that to happen to her.
Yeah.
No, I just don't write late at night anymore. And this would have been back in the 90s. And then the glass.
The 1890s, when you were writing by candlelight.
Yeah, my candlelight in the 1890s. And this glass really would not have had green tea in it back then.
It would have had me either.
That's a big change from the 1490s when you were hand illustrating the beginning of each chapter.
Okay, Gerald, what's your story about thinking you were brilliant?
I mean, there's really no story to that. I mean, it's just. I mean, there've been times where, and I don't know what it is, but you. I guess I put that in there for writers who are watching this in the writer track to basically say, don't kick yourself if at some point you go back to look at something you've written and you think, oh my God, I thought that was decent or good, and it turns out that it's garbage. There have been many times where I've thrown stuff away the next day, like what was I smoking something last night? What was it?
Yeah.
Well, if it didn't have to be late at night, I could have drained the whole thing, but.
Well, we wouldn't want all that green tea going to your head.
Yes.
The worst ones are the ones where you wake up in the middle of the night with a brilliant idea.
That's what I meant. Like
after a dream or something, and you're like, "Oh my God, this is gonna radicate!" And you scribble it all down, and you're like, "I'm determined to get this down. I'm not gonna forget. And you write it down, and then the following day you look at it, and it's not even English.
Yes, it's gibberish.
And then the orange flower turns into a rocket ship, and the dinosaur comes out, and you're like, what the hell is that?
That's it. That's it. I guess I didn't write that out very well, but yeah, that's what I meant. Like you
okay,
think,
then
you think that you have this, that's it. Right, and then you wake up the next morning and it's gibberish. It's not just bad; it's complete gibberish.
Yeah,
it's like, and the linen is green. And you're like, what the
And at the time, you're like, "Oh my God, this is gold!" Like,
Yes, Faith?
just give me the Nobel Prize now, you know.
Okay, I have to admit, I got up one night and I had nothing to write with, and I used lipstick on the bathroom mirror. My husband called up and he said, "Would you come here a minute? What is this?" And I said, "I don't know."
Like, are you an extra on Murder, She Wrote?
It was the only thing I had handy, and I thought those notes would be enough to help me remember. He bought me a pad and a pen and put them by my head.
Yeah, that's good for a writer to have.
Sometimes that doesn't matter. Have you ever come across something in your notes that's exclamation point, underline, and you're like, what the?
Yeah.
Like, you have no clue what it's, it's circled, and it's like, yes, this is, I need to remember this. And you're like, you have no frame of reference for what it's referring to, but you know, back when you wrote it down, you made the note that it was supposed to be important. But now looking at it, you have no idea. And the thing about writing fantasy is sometimes you make up words and phrases, and you'll have this word that you made up the word, and you've underlined it and circled it and drawn an arrow, and you just have absolutely no idea what that's supposed to be. But at the time, it was like, oh yeah, this is the linchpin. This is the linchpin, and I need to remember this.
Well, there is at least good precedent for it. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the epic long poem by Samuel Taylor Coleridge, one of the sort of great romantic poets of the very early 19th century. Xanadu, right? The poem is called Kubla Khan. In Xanadu did Kubla Khan a stately pleasure dome decree where Alph the sacred river ran through. Anyway, the thing was inspired by an opium dream. And while he was writing it down, someone knocked on the door, the infamous man from Porlock, who then distracted him on some nonsense business about nothing at all. And he forgot the rest of the poem, and it was never written. And this is actually and so the man from Porlock is now responsible for the loss of one of the great poems in the English language.
That's a good seg into the next one. Never have I ever not been able to answer a reader question about a plot point because I couldn't remember the story.
There's not enough green tea in my glass to answer that question.
I am so bad for this. I'll be honest. I am not really writing very much at the moment. Pandemic, lockdown, freeze, whatever. But generally speaking, the moment I've finished writing something, I move on to the next thing. And it goes out into the world and I forget about it. And I don't reread it. I've never listened to one of my audiobooks. The moment it's out, it's done. And so, I should be drinking this whole thing because this happens a lot. Well, people come up to me at a convention, or they'll send me an email and they'll say, "So when this happened in the book, and George says this," and I'm like, what? And there have been times where, like, when I was like preparing, when a novel has gone out of print, a traditionally published novel has gone out of print, and I thought, I'll just give this a quick pass before I do a self-pub or something, right, when the rights come back to me, and I'll sit down to reread it and sort of fix anything that needs fixing. And I'll be like, ooh, this is interesting. I wonder what's going to happen. Who's the bad guy? No idea. Absolutely. I can read murder mysteries and like, oh, I didn't see that coming. I
Oh
actually
my
turned around to
God.
my wife once and said, this is not bad, but I kind of figured out who the villain was about 3/4 of the way through. And she's like, you wrote it, you blithering idiot.
The only thing that I have that's comparable to that is because I'm writing an epic fantasy and there are a lot of characters to juggle, that there are times when I know it's time to get back to a particular character's story, and I have to go back and reread the previous section to try to of that particular character story to figure out, okay, what was going on here? Where were they? What were they doing?
I have a couple of fan groups, and I'll go to the fan group and say, does anybody remember what book this character died in? and does anybody remember if this character is still alive? Because the times when I didn't do that, I had to kill a character 3 times. She kept coming back to life. She was in 3 separate books.
I once had an editor, in responding to a first draft of a manuscript, say, we were a bit confused by this Jane character until one of the other editors pointed out that Mary disappeared halfway through.
Retcon.
Yeah, I've had my editor say, is she a redhead with blue eyes, or is she a brunette with green eyes? Which one do you actually want for this character? And I'm
I
like,
go with the blue hair and red eyes, personally.
just make up your mind, one or the other, because I had switched. It's the same character, but I had switched back and forth in terms of the character's description.
Okay. Never have I ever taken a creative writing class.
Does high school count?
Sure.
Okay.
Back in,
Wait,
1880.
Does that mean you
was
have
that?
taken one or you haven't?
Back in
Yeah.
the 70s. Oh, wait,
If you have taken one, you drink.
yeah, okay.
Oh, then I
In the
shouldn't have drank.
70s. In high school.
Very confused by this game.
In
Okay,
high
just
school.
drink some more.
I have never taken a creative writing class. I have, however, taught some.
I think that should count.
That counts something. When did you take? To what level and depth, Gerald, for you?
I was fortunate enough at university if there were poetry classes, to take a poetry class from George Ella Lyon, well, a couple of classes from Nikki Finney. And folks who are in the poetry community know that both of them are award-winning poets. And so that was a wonderful opportunity, because they both happened to be teaching in the English department while I was there. So yeah, I learned a lot.
And
Mostly how awful my poetry was, but
That's the primary function of creative writing classes, I think.
right.
Yeah.
that and to tear down genre fiction, as I hear it.
Well, not in my classes.
Well, that's good. I know at the university I teach at, the creative writing department is well known for only having one professor that will let you write genre. Everything else has to be literary.
Don't get me started on that and what happens in MFA programs. I don't want you to get nasty mail. But I will say that I've seen, the downside is that I've seen talented people go into programs that basically strip them of the thing that made them a unique writer.
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah.
Yes, they learned some things, but but basically the thing that would have made them interesting to read by readers is the one thing that the program kind of erased out of them.
Voice is the main thing that most college level creative writing courses destroy. They just destroy voice, because the character's voice and the authorial voice are not determined by punctuation or proper sentence structure or the relation of logic to the way the words flow through a paragraph. It's inside the character's head, and it's horrible what comes out of so-called literary classes. Sorry. I get hate mail or female.
Male or female.
Well, I mean, and the one thing that I would say also is that one of the primary products of creating writing classes is not really creative writers so much as it is creative writing teachers. So it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
So, next one. Never have I ever skipped research and just faked knowing something to use it in a book.
All right, fantasy. Yeah.
Gerald is the consummate researcher, apparently.
Apparently, yeah.
Well, there are things that I research if it's something that I think that I need to, but I'm writing fantasy. And people who know me know that I am notoriously adamant about the fiction part of science fiction. I know there are a lot of people, and I'm probably going to make some folk upset, but I know there are a lot of people who are just so enamored of, well, it shouldn't have faster than light travel because that's not possible. And potatoes didn't come to Europe until the 1600s. So, all of this stuff that's about how the world is historically. And if you're writing historical fiction, okay. But for me, the fiction part of it is more important than the rest of it. And because I'm writing fantasy, a lot of the things that, I write, I put together myself in terms of, particularly if you're talking about world building. I don't necessarily need to know that potatoes didn't come to Europe until the 1600s in order to be able to put potatoes in the story, right? But there are people that they are adamant about that stuff, and I'm less so. It's fiction. I don't care. Write a good story. Write something that captures my imagination. Write something that makes me laugh, or something that, is something that engrosses me. I don't care if the secondary conduit doesn't work because it doesn't bypass the thingamajig. Okay, I don't care.
and there are people who live to point this stuff out when you get it wrong, and most of them involve horses and boats, because everybody, sorry Faith, but everybody connected to horses and boats are crazy people, because these are not hobbies, these are life choices for these.
Exactly.
Yes, and so I avoid writing about horses and boats wherever possible, because I know nothing about them, and I'm not interested in trying to find out, because I'll never know enough to satisfy those people.
Or incorporate it into my story in such a way that satisfies them. Oh, well, they couldn't have gotten from here to here in X time. They would have killed 5 horses. I don't care.
Yeah.
The average speed of a Spanish galleon was only 16 knots.
Yeah.
Well, I always tell people, my niece is an endurance horse rider, and she rides the same horse in a 24-hour period, 125 miles. So it can be done.
That's a lot.
Right horse and the right rider, the right electrolytes.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting.
And on a more serious,
It shuts people up.
On a more serious note, though, for for writers as an addendum to what I just said. For me, I've said what's not important. What is important is that whatever you decide to do, just make it internally consistent. As long as it's consistent in your story, I don't care that, as Fife said, a swallow can't fly X number of miles and however long. I don't care. As long as it's internally consistent to your story and your world building, that's all that matters to me.
Yeah. One of the first Amazon reviews I ever got about 15, 16 years ago was for a sort of World War II, part of it was World War II thriller. And it involves a U-boat, and the captain decides to abandon ship. And I said that, he opts to scuttle the ship. And somebody wrote and I can't remember whether I got this right or wrong. But they said, well, there are no scuttles on a U-boat. You mean a scupper, or the other way around? I don't even know, and I don't even care. 1 star. It's like, as soon as you said that, I was that. I'm like, it's like, and the other thing is when people use things like that to go after things that they don't really want to admit, right? Like, I remember the guy with some Disney spin-off of The Little Mermaid or something where they had a black mermaid. And there were these guys writing, well, there would be no black mermaid because the melanin in the skin at great depths, you wouldn't develop. And somebody wrote, that's what bothers you and not the talking crab? It's like...
Right. Just admit what your real problem is.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Did you ever do a research lie you want to own up to?
What did you say?
Do you have a research lie that you want to own up to, or a shortcut?
Well, back in the day, we didn't have the internet and Google to drive around your people's neighborhoods. So I made up all kind of garbage about cities I was never in. Most of the time, I would try to create an alternate city with a different name and just use their maps and maybe some lesser known locations. But nowadays, I do try to be more careful with my research. I at least go online and check 2 or 3 sources before I write something. Doesn't mean I don't say, to heck with it, I'm doing what I want anyway. So I'm now, instead of writing mystery and women's thrillers, I'm now writing fantasy, and I can pretty much do what I want.
And again, everybody does this, right? Everybody makes mistakes. I love Terry Pratchett. I think Terry Pratchett is one of the geniuses of fantasy genre. But, I can't remember which one it was, Snuff, I think, that I was reading or listening to the other day. And there's a key point where, the bad guy gets his crossbow on somebody, but the hero has removed the firing pin.
On his crossbow?
A firing pin on a crossbow, so it won't work. And I'm like, yeah, you just made that up, because that's not a real thing.
Do they have a trigger?
Yeah, it's a cross. I mean, it's a pull thing. You pull it, and you then pull the little thing, and it goes.
Maybe the little thing is what he. Maybe the little thing is what he meant. The little, yeah, but not the firing pin.
But it's not something that somebody could aim a crossbow at you and not know that it wasn't going to work.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like Agatha Christie's, automatic revolver. Not a thing.
Well, Gatling gun. That's an automatic revolver. Okay, so with some of that comment, never have I ever responded to a negative review.
Now, are we supposed to drink when we have done that?
If you have done it, you drink.
I have done it.
I have done it.
And made a total burrows behind of myself.
Yeah, I don't do it anymore. But again, in the early days of the internet, when it was still, steam driven. You know, yeah, I responded to an Amazon review or two when people like did exactly what we're talking about, right? Where they criticize you for something that is correct,
Right.
and they've got it wrong, and I get, you know, incandescent with rage about that kind of stuff, you know. I had somebody who gave me a 1-star review because I used the word till instead of until. And I was like, okay, so till has been used in place of until since the 14th century. Every major writer in the world uses it. But, you know, but it achieved nothing at all.
Yeah.
You know.
What makes me angry, and what I responded to early on in, as you say, the prehistoric days of the internet, is when people say, Faith, you should have known better. Faith, you should do better than this. Faith, I'm disappointed in you. When they call me out, I got riled. Review about the book. I don't care. You say anything you want about my characters and my writing style, but don't call me out. Don't tell me I should know better. That used to tick. That's why I don't read any reviews now of any kind, good or bad. I cannot bear it when fans use their anonymity to attack.
I mean, when you say you don't read reviews, does that include like trade reviews?
Yep, I don't read anything anymore.
Really?
Yep. The only thing I will read is if the PR department at Penguin sends me something and says, you should read this. I will read what PRH's PR department sends me. That's it. I don't read anything. Nothing. Absolutely nothing.
I'll read like...
I've never...
I get mad when they call me out. And they do it often.
I've never responded to a negative review, but let me say 2 things about reviews. Number one, everybody has 1-star reviews. Mm-hmm. Even you know, you can, if that's something that you want to do, you can go and look at any major author and look at their reviews, and they'll be 1-star reviews. A lot of them are asinine, the kind of things that AJ was talking about. But I said that to say to those people who will be viewing this, that if there is an author that you are reading that you enjoy, take 2 minutes to go write a review, because the people who don't like that author will make the time to go and write a negative review. And too often people who enjoy an author's work will just, okay, I enjoyed that, and then move on. And so you end up with this odd imbalance that isn't really reflective of an author's audience, because 9 times out of 10, the people who want to say something negative will almost always speak up. And the vast majority of people who would say something positive if you ask them often don't take the time to do that.
The vast majority of my negative reviews on Amazon are political. People who don't like my politics, particularly in my my recent sort of domestic suspense thrillers, and that's where I get the most hate mail as well.
And I've had people write one review and put it on 1-star review and put it on every single book. The same review, the exact same words by the same person on every single book. And in one case, it contained a description of a scene which was not in any of the books. Not one.
Were you able to get it removed?
I did complain. I said, and every single one I sent in, and I said, this review is on all of these books. This scene took place in none of these books. And I sent it in. I think there were like 6 books in the Jane Yellow Rock series at that time. And I sent it in, every single one, and they did remove them.
I had a person who got upset with me because there was a convention that I won't name that had invited a sad puppy as a guest after I had agreed to come. And once I found that out, I wrote to them with plenty of time and let them know that given the fact that they had invited this person who did not even believe that I, as a Black author, had any right to be in the genre, let alone as a guest at some of these times, that I would not be coming, and I withdrew my agreement to come. And I was not fomenting rebellion or revolution. I was just talking about myself, and other authors heard about it and began to retract their desire to attend. And some of this guy's fans jumped on to the various platforms and gave all my books 1 star. It had nothing to do with whether they liked the book or not, but they were upset because the convention did then turn around because so many people were saying that they weren't going to come. They disinvited this particular person, and that person's fans got upset. And for whatever reason, I was the ringleader who had led this revolution unbeknownst to me. So they targeted me. But I say that again to say that these are the kind of people that will do their best to try and damage an author's reputation and readership, so that if you're a person who enjoys any particular author, take 2 minutes. It doesn't take long and it doesn't cost you anything. Take 2 minutes and go and write a review, because the people who don't like that author and what that author is reading or what that author is writing will go and try and damage them.
Did you get that, Gerald?
And
Yes, do you get it?
admittedly, regardless of where you stand on the political spectrum, somebody on the other side is going to attack your reviews because of your politics. And it doesn't matter where you stand, you're going to be attacked. And that's just the fact of modern life.
Next question.
So Rich, like, okay, so
Let's be a writer.
He's like, well, okay.
So hopefully this one's going to spawn some happy stories. Never have I ever heard someone talking about my work without realizing the author was an earshot.
I don't think I'm famous enough for that.
Even at a con counts.
I can't remember. Maybe, but I'm not sure.
No story for it now.
I'm not sure. This is not really relevant, but I'm going to tell it anyway. This sums up my con experience. I was at JordanCon once, and I was I had my guest badge on, and I got into the elevator, and you know what the elevators are like at JordanCon, and so it's packed like 45 people in the elevator, and this woman turns around and sees my badge, and she says, "Oh, you're a guest, but I've never heard of you. You must be a writer."
Ooh.
Wow.
And how long did it take you to think of a reply to that would have been probably?
I don't know what the reply is.
Well, the reply would be, "Why, yes, you must not read."
Yes, probably. Can you read? I mean, more than
enough to get a badge.
I mean,
that would be the proper response. "Why, yes, dear, of course I'm a writer, and I'm quite certain you can't read anything at all."
I do have a story, but I can't tell it here.
Oh.
AJ knows what I'm talking about.
Okay, so I'll say I was driving through a fast food pickup line, and I had one of my books on the seat beside me. And the girl at the drive-thru said, "Oh, I read that book. it's the best book I've ever read. It absolutely changed my life. And I looked at her and I said, I kind of wrote that book. And she refused to believe it until I gave her my driver's license. And then I took the driver's license back and she was screaming, hey, everybody, she's here. And I'm going, okay, I've made a mistake. I will.
You know, now that you say it, I do have a similar story. I was at a pub in London, and I was I had some students with me, and it was a pub that I had used in a book called Secret Machines that I wrote with Tom DeLonge of Blink-182, and I got into a conversation with the barman. And he knew of the book because somebody must have come across it and pointed out that their pub was in the book. So I'm talking to him about it, and there was bizarrely an American in the pub, the only American, and he turned around and he's like, "Yeah, I call bullshit." It's like, you didn't write that book. And I was like, "Okay, what? I mean." Who are you? What? Why are we? What? And he's like, yeah, I don't believe you. And I'm like, I
don't care.
I don't care because, you know, there's the book and you know, whatever. So you have the good story and I have the crap story. This is the greatest thing ever. It completely changed my life, which is why I'm working fast food.
Ooh.
Oh, he's right. Ooh. You're an evil man.
Thank you. That's why we get along.
Cheers.
Never have I ever.
This is how I met AJ on a panel at JordanCon. 4 years ago or 3 years ago?
Feels longer.
The pandemic has warped my sense of time.
It's got to be 4 years ago.
4 years ago, and we were having this kind of conversation. We'd never met. We were on the same panel, and then after the panel, AJ was like, "Hey, would you like to grab a beer?" And I was like, "You know what? I would," because I'd heard AJ's commentary, and he had heard mine, and we were like, "You know what? I think we'd get along just fine." The rest is history.
The rest is calamitous conventional history.
Because I met Gerald the next year because you were already friends with AJ.
Yeah.
You were already friends with David Coe. And I came into the group the next year and just spread discord around, I think.
That's what you do.
Yeah, I see you agreeing. So problem child.
Never have I ever had a fan confuse me for a different author.
That's bad.
I have a story about this, but it's not about writing. But I think it's entertaining. I'm from Lexington, Kentucky, and I was in college, and this was back when Spike Lee was the biggest director on the planet, right? Like, Do the Right Thing had come out, and She's Gotta Have It, and Jungle Fever, all of that. So Spike was the biggest thing happening, and they brought him to Lexington they brought him to UK to give a lecture. And he was staying downtown at the Hyatt Regency, and they were doing a press conference. And I was going down because we had a little black newspaper on campus called Mo Better News, which was a play on Mo Better Blues, his movie. And so I went down as press and had my African, necklace on. I had a hat that had an X on it because the movie Malcolm X had just come out. And so I go down to the Hyatt, I go inside, and I'm about to go up to where they're holding the press conference. And there's this group of middle-aged white women off to the side talking. And I'm looking around trying to figure out where I'm supposed to go. And one of them comes over and she says, "We are so glad to have you here in Lexington, and we hope that you've enjoyed your stay, and we want you to feel welcome. And I'm sitting here like, what is she talking about? And the rest of them come over, and they were part of this like Daughters of the Revolution kind of social club in Lexington. And they were like, like a gaggle of hens. Like they were standing around telling me how much they enjoyed having me and hope I was having a good time and this, that, and the other. And I go on up the escalator, please come back, this, that, and the other. And it took me like 5 minutes to like, they think I'm Spike Lee. Like Spike and I look nothing alike, but they swore I was Spike Lee and wanted to make sure that I felt welcome and that I was having a good time in Lexington and the whole nine. I'm like, wow.
You should have gone back down and said, you know what would make me feel welcome is a really good bottle of your local bourbon. Perhaps you could find one for me.
Or better yet, let's all go drinking together and you pick up my bar bill.
I would be so.
They swore like this light-skinned, 21-year-old was the 30-year-old brown-skinned Spike Lee, gawky, skinny Spike Lee. I'm like, wow, like y'all didn't even try. You didn't even really like take a real good shot at it. You just like black guy in the X cap. That has to be Spike Lee. Let's go tell him we hope he's happy here. Like, wow.
I don't know. Though, Gerald, I don't know what you're making a big deal about because I get mistaken for Spike Lee all the time. I take my celebrity impersonations very seriously.
Is anyone ever going to tell the audience what this means?
Yeah.
No, I think we can't now.
Yeah. It's gone too long.
Yeah, you had to be there.
And speaking of going too long, it looks like we're about at our time. So any parting words? No.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of the horrible things that have taken place, but being a writer is really one of the most delightful, fun jobs in the world.
And sometimes people read your shit.
Say what?
Sometimes people even read your shit.
Yeah, sometimes they do. Well, only plumbers. But anyway, the reason being a writer is so much fun is not just the interaction with the fans, which can be absolutely delightful and soul inspiring, but for moments like this. And we have missed it during the recent unpleasantness. We have missed being with each other. We've missed visiting with our writers and having a glass or sitting in some little secluded place and talking about the business. And we've really missed it. So what everybody's seen is us giddy, me on green tea.
On green, yep.
Right. Seeing us giddy at being together.
Makes a change.
My last comments are get vaccinated, please. Mm-hmm. Wear a mask, wash your hands. The sooner we can get back to a sense of normalcy, the sooner it will be possible for us to really come together without threatening one another's lives. And I look forward to that day when the CDC says it's all clear and we can get back together and do this in person. I miss all of you all, and hope you all are well.
Yeah. Thank you. Again, this is Richard Fife with JordanCon's Writers Track, having a fun time with Faith Hunter, Gerald Coleman, and AJ Hartley.
Gerald L. Coleman.
Gerald L. Coleman, correct. You can find links to their works down in the description, or if you're like doing things longhand, the links are around their faces. Have a good one. Stay safe.